defense, you greatly increase your odds of winning. And that's what money does in the criminal justice system.
And Bremner, so say you on this Robert Durst latest, I guess they called him earlier in the year, your prediction.
Well, I agree with Alex. I think, I think that Durst, is crazy like a fox. I mean, he's been thought to have killed his wife back in New York, and then this murder in Los Angeles, and the one in Galveston, in Galveston Bay. And he seems to go along, even tying himself in with this television series. Dick DeGuerin was his lawyer, and I understand probably still is, out of Texas. And I know Robert Hirschhorn was his jury consultant, and I know both of them. And I covered that verdict for, I think, CNN. And Durst dropped when that verdict came in, the not guilty. I mean, even he thought, I think, that he might be convicted. But maybe he's got, more confidence now, obviously, with what he's been doing the last few years. And it's, it's an old case. So my prediction is he could end up coming out of this, as well as he has through really a life of crime. I mean, the judge called him a serial killer. I mean, there's quite a few victims in his path, but he's walked through unscathed. Except for, didn't he plead guilty on the weapons charge, or say he was going to on the federal weapons charge? So that might be one strike against him.
Yes. Let's go after Phoenix. Dwane, so say you with Mr. Robert Durst.
Well, I tell people all the time that life works on a bell curve, and out of 10 trials, you're going to win one you're supposed to lose, you're going to lose one you're supposed to win, and the other 8 turn out kind of like you figure. And, so every time you go in there, you have no idea what a jury's going to do. And, and my stomach was in knots when I was listening to him read that verdict. That's I don't know about the other lawyers on the panel.
Oh, for sure.
That's just, every time I hear a verdict being read, it's just like, oh my God, it's my stomach goes in a knot. But you never know, and absolutely, look at O.J. Simpson. He did the same thing. They hired the best in every field and every expert, and and they won the trial, and it makes a difference. Resources makes a difference in a trial. There's just no way getting around that.
I think everybody will definitely agree with you. Okay, the next story we'll tackle is Aaron Hernandez. Let's hear some sound courtesy of ESPN.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have some breaking news. Aaron Hernandez was found guilty of murder in the first degree for killing Odin Lloyd in June of 2013. The former Patriots tight end has been sentenced to a mandatory life in prison sentence without parole. Lloyd, you may remember, was dating the sister of Aaron Hernandez's fiance. He was found shot 6 times in an industrial park less than a mile away from Hernandez's home. Skip and Stephen A., we just got this information in, and so we're taking a moment to digest. The jury deliberated for 6 days, 6 work days. Again, he is guilty, sentenced to life in prison without parole. Skip, do you want to go first?
Let Stephen A. take a shot at it.
Stephen A., you want to go? Your reaction to that?
Well, first of all, as we've said on many occasions, on behalf of all of us at this show and at this network, our heart goes out to the family for Odin Lloyd. He was murdered. We all knew this. The particulars was something that we were going to learn through the courts, but nothing's going to bring him back. And I still remember when Aaron Hernandez was being arraigned after being arrested, how Odin Lloyd's family, his mom, siblings, were in attendance and how devastated they all appeared.
Yeah.
So your heart goes out to his family. Your heart goes out to him. God rest his soul. And this is just tragic on all levels. Aaron Hernandez was a star football player. Chances are, if he had not been arrested, the New England Patriots would have won a Super Bowl sooner than this past February. Mm-hmm. He signed a contract in excess of $40 million, had his whole career, his whole life in front of him, and based on today's verdict, he threw it all away. And why? We don't know why. We can speculate that he never left the streets, that he didn't want to move on from what he supposedly should have graduated from.
Right here in Bristol, Connecticut.
That's right. The company you keep, the kind of environment you choose to be in, your unwillingness to let go of an environment, a past, the company that I alluded to, etc. They're not the ones that just received a life sentence. And let's repeat what happened. He has been found guilty of first-degree murder. He has been sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, which means that Aaron Hernandez will be in jail, in prison, for the rest of his natural life. For what? For what? It's just sad. But I also think, regardless of what they're trying, what they may be willing to say, I'm never one of those guys, Skip, Kerry, who believes that a jury is oblivious to the real world and what's going on. And they never hear anything. You might not hear any particulars about this case, but I think you see what's going on in society. I think you surmise what's going on with at least some of these athletes and what have you, and you want to throw a curveball towards all of that to send a message that we need to stop this nonsense. You need to stop this nonsense. Whatever it is that you're doing that could get yourself in trouble, it ain't worth it, because this is how you can end up. And certainly that has happened with Aaron Hernandez. My heart goes out to Odin Lloyd and his family, but in the end, this seems like a just verdict, and I don't think anybody.
Okay, and Bremner, you covered this trial from A to Z. What do you make of this out of the year 2015?
Well, I thought it was a huge trial, and I thought it was an excellently tried, by the prosecution, circumstantial evidence case. Like one of the best I've ever seen in the coverage I've done of high-profile trials. It was low-key, beautifully done. They linked everything up, and it was just, it was like amazing watching everything from the surveillance showing him with a Glock when he said he didn't have a Glock to, you know, basically being able to pinpoint where he was from the phone and right at the time of the murder, and then even, you know, to tie him to, you know, casings, and even gum was used, you know, in terms of the forensic evidence. And then, of course, he had his girlfriend, fiance, you know, get rid of the weapon. And even her mood at the time, she's crying, weeping, you know, she borrows her sister's car. I mean, and that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of this evidence. When I was covering this trial, I thought to myself, they'd be crazy if they don't convict him. You know, everything points to Aaron Hernandez. And the other part of the case was his demeanor in court was so inappropriate. He's doing the backslapping with the lawyers. He's, you know, laughing. He's saying, I love you to his mom. And he's acting like, you know, the whole thing is kind of a farce. And I thought to myself, you know, they're going to just want to wipe that smirk off his face just like the jury they wanted to with Scott Peterson. You know, that's the worst thing he could have done in a case like this that had such tight circumstantial evidence. So, and remember at the very end when the jury came out and he mouthed the words to them, you're wrong? When they said you're guilty of murder one, he said you're wrong. I'm like, that's the ultimate in arrogance.
Yes, that is. And Alex Sanchez at New York, what do you make of this trial, and what do you make of what him and the clip overall?
Well, I really liked Ann's analysis. I thought that was right on point. And this is one of those cases where money can't buy you out of a conviction. And I think the difference is that there was a lot of circumstantial evidence, but I think the most important evidence was probably the videotape evidence. That was, to me, very damning. Mm-hmm. And when people think of the term circumstantial, people act like, you know, when they use the term circumstantial, like that's somehow, you know,
inferior,
questionable evidence, or there's some. I don't think so. I think circumstantial cases, if you have a lot of independent evidence that is very suggestive of certain facts, is extremely powerful. And obviously it was powerful enough to convict this man. But that guy's statement, the commentator, whoever was making that long statement just now that you played, you know, stop this, or why are you doing this? Aaron Hernandez is a sociopath.
Yeah.
You can't. You're not going to talk some sociopath, a psychopath, out of being a psychopath or being a killer. The guy's. I don't know how he arrived at that station in life, but that's where he is. And no talking in the world and no therapy is going to stop this guy. There's only one kind of therapy that works with people like him. It's called behavioral therapy, and that's jail. Mm-hmm. And that's how Aaron Hernandez is going to be stopped, and he has been stopped.
Yeah, no question. Dwane Cates, attorney out of the Phoenix area, your take of the Aaron Hernandez trial.
Well, sure. I always got to go second after these two great lawyers get to talk about all the good stuff. And here I am just to clean up what's left over. But I agree with Ann.
You didn't say you agree with us.
I do. But I agree with Ann that trial is theater. I tell people all the time, it's more about perception than it is about what the facts are. It's about what the jury perceives and if the jury doesn't like your client, I don't care what the facts are. You're going to lose. I mean, if they think your client is arrogant and smug and they don't like them, I mean, you got a really, really tough road to hoe. You really do. It's hard to come back from that. And the state did a great job of putting on the evidence. They did it in a way that made sense, and there's not a lot of prosecutors in a complex case like that can do that, I think they came out with the right verdict.
No question. Another story that went all year, and it went for the last, I would say, since 2008, is Jodi Arias. Let's listen to this and talk on the other side.
The court has considered the nature and circumstances of the offense. I have considered the aggravating factor found by the jury. I have identified aggravating and mitigating factors and considered those factors in arriving at a sentence for Ms. Arias. As aggravation, the court finds, as the jury found, the crime was especially cruel. The offense was committed with at least 2 deadly weapons, a gun and at least 1 knife. The crime involved substantial planning and preparation. The defendant did not render aid to the victim. The defendant destroyed evidence at the crime scene. The defendant went to great lengths to conceal her involvement in the crime. The court has also considered, as an aggravating factor, the emotional and financial harm to the victim family members. As mitigation, the court finds the defendant has no prior criminal history. The defendant has family and community support. The defendant has mental health issues. The court has also considered the defendant's childhood background, family history, and her expressed remorse. The court finds the mitigation presented is not sufficiently substantial to call for leniency and that a natural life sentence is appropriate. It is ordered the defendant shall be incarcerated in the Department of Corrections for the rest of her natural life with no possibility of parole.
Okay, let's go to Dwane Cates now on this out of Phoenix. Dwane just wrapped up in a few months ago, about 6 to be exact. Wow, talk about theater. What was your take on the Jodi Arias case that finally came to an end?
I was involved in that from beginning to end, and it was exhausting. I mean, and it was, and I'll tell you that all the people that were there that were involved in it in some form throughout that, none of our lives actually were the same ever after that. I mean, it kind of took something out of you. It was crazy. I mean, I literally thought when the first verdict came out that we were going to walk out of the courtroom and there were going to be torches and pitchforks, of people out front. I mean, it was crazy, and in the end, I think